Alright, so in this video, I'm going to tell you about my new FXR from the 80s. Let's check it out. Alright, what's going on YouTube? BKLO is back in the building. And if you've been following my content for a couple years, or you ask any of my friends, then you know that buying an FXR has definitely been one of the things that's been on the list for quite a while now. And it's like, yeah, in terms of the purpose-built scene in the Harley-Davidson world, it's definitely a bike that is trending right now. But for me personally, a lot of why I decided to buy this bike is for the functionality and the purpose and the fact that this bike just fits me really well as a smaller dude coming in at 5'7", 150 pounds. So like a Dyna, you know, I could tour on a Dyna, I could be comfortable on a Dyna all day. Whereas this bike just fits me really, really well. I'm really psyched with just the general, you know, rider to bike ratio on this thing. But yeah, if you've been following my Instagram, then you probably know a little bit about the backstory about this bike. And the story between me and this bike is actually pretty crazy. I first met this bike about over a year ago, where my buddy Peter Gunz gave me a call over the summer. Him and his wife had been broken down in the neighborhood. Apparently the battery was shot on this bike. So I actually hopped on this bike, switched bikes with Peter, and then Peter pushed me, having his foot on the rear peg while I, you know, took control of this bike and got it back to his house. So I actually rode this bike, well, technically rode this bike a year ago, and it's just funny that the constellations would align in such a way that it's now actually my bike. So yeah, that's one of the big selling points about this bike is the original owner, well, not the original owner, but the previous owner was Peter Gunz. So if you follow his content, if you see the bikes that he has set up, then you know that this bike is set up and dialed in correctly. And over the summer, I had been, you know, playing around with a couple different offers that were on the market, and then at the end of the day, once Peter hit me up, because he knew that, you know, I had been interested in FXR for years, so he kind of gave me priority on this one. Once he hit me up, you know, knowing that he dialed it in properly, knowing that he set it up properly, and also having sat on this bike before and had some experience, a little bit of experience with this bike, it made it really easy to pull the trigger on this. You know, also obviously he's local, he's a friend, so, you know, it was kind of just a really good opportunity, and I was in the perfect place at the perfect time. And here we are. I now have a bike that I've wanted for a really long time. So what I'll do is I will do a little walk around here like I've done in previous videos of my other bikes, just showing you kind of what's going on here. And then in a separate video, we'll go along for the first ride, and I will tell you my initial impressions of an FXR from the 80s. So of course, this is a 1988 FXRC. There's a couple characteristics of this bike that definitely make it one of the more desirable models, such as this bike does come stock with dual disc brakes. That's what's up. Major fan. I do run dual discs on all my bikes. And I believe this particular model also does come stock with the gauges raised like this. So you do have the gauges on the bars, although I do believe these are aftermarket gauges from Drag Specialties, so definitely not the stock gauges. As for the bar setup, Peter had raised them as high as they could go, maintaining the original bend of the bar without having to change the cables or anything. So that's the most height you're going to get with keeping the original bar and not having to change any cables. And honestly, I'm probably going to leave it like that for a while. So the paint on this bike, woo, man. The way that this paint has faded in the sun, you know, it's definitely made it really easy to pull the trigger on this bike. I love this paint. It definitely gives it a lot of character, and rarely do I see any of these paint schemes on bikes these days. So I definitely love that sun faded blue, and I have no plans of getting rid of that anytime soon. We also do have some, you know, things that give bikes character, such as this little dent over here on the tank. You know, yeah, the bike's from the 80s, you know, it's not gonna come to you unscathed. You know, it is what it is. You know, these are the things that give our bikes characters, right? So I don't know, you know, I could probably, you know, get someone to blow that out or something, but then it would compromise the paint. So honestly, I like the paint so much that whatever, if there's a dent here or there, it doesn't really bother me that much, because again, we are talking about a bike from the 80s, so you know, my expectations for this thing to be in premium condition are pretty low. Okay, dropping down, Peter did put on the Bubs exhaust. This is really, this is definitely a more rare exhaust. These are pretty hard to find these days. I know a lot of builders, such as Shovelhead Austin, also run these on his chopper. They sound great. I'll do a startup before I close it off, and yeah, man, it gives it character. It's kind of refreshing to see a bike that doesn't have a 2-into-1, right? Fairing, I believe this is an Arlen Ness quarter fairing. I'm probably going to change this out for a Memphis Shades. I don't think we're going to do a Road Warrior on this one. I think we're just going to keep it a gauntlet, so similar style in terms of what I'm using this bike to do, which maybe I should have said. This bike is mostly going to be for city riding. So I do a lot of urban riding, and you know, let's be honest, you know, for New York City, you don't really need a Dyna with a 110 or a 116. It's kind of unnecessary, especially now that I have the FXRT fairing on my lowrider. It's just not built for optimal city riding, whereas I think where this bike is going to shine is in the city. And you know, we do have a big enough engine where this bike can also handle itself on the highway. So I really like having the option where it's like, all right, I'm going to do a lot of city riding, but hey, if I want to hop on the highway, maybe hop into the Catskills, I could probably do it on this bike, no worries. Whereas if I'm running like a Sportster, like the 88 Sportster that I started on, that bike does not want to be on the highway, man. You know, you're only going to get that thing up to 4th gear, screaming on the highway, whereas I think this bike will be just fine on the highway. Engine itself did not come black. I know Peter painted that all black. Personally, I really like the way it contrasts with the chrome, so no intentions of changing that. We do have the passenger floorboards. I don't know, guys. I'm kind of on the fence about these. I'm going to put Jen on the back and see how she likes them first before making a decision, but I might go with something different. But, you know, again, I do want to see how Jen feels about them before I change them up, because she'll definitely be riding as a passenger at times, but hey, you know, they're nice, right? And we have the Saddleman step-up seat provided from Get Lowered Cycles. Yeah, the stock seat, or the seat that came on this, it just didn't have the, it just, you know, I'm just so used to a step-up at this point that this was one thing that I wanted to change off the bat to make this thing feel a little bit more like my own. So had to throw the step up on there. We didn't go too crazy, you know, just the diamond lattice stitching, black on black. You know, I didn't want to take too much away from the paint on this bike, so again, didn't go too crazy on a seat. And then we got this little mini sissy bar, right? Really digging this thing. Could be a good backrest if Jen wants to come without having to throw a full-on tall sissy bar. And it's also really good because these bars aren't tall enough for me to run a bar bag. So this Biltwell Xfil, I believe 7 this is, or 8, one of them, is really, really good for what I'm trying to do, you know, which is just little city rips. That's all the storage I really need. I really don't want to put bags on this bike. You can see we do have these brackets here because I was going to throw the Thrashin escape bags on there, but those bags would not fit on this bike with that sissy bar, so I'm actually going to return those and just probably go either with the essential bags or just go with no bags for now. We'll see what happens. And here's the other side, right? They never want to show you the other side of things, but here it is. And then I should also mention that this bike did come with Super Shocks, so these are adjustable. If I had to guess, I feel like these are like maybe 11 inches or maybe 12, I don't know, but pretty good, man. You know, definitely exceeded my expectations for a new bike that I just bought used. I'm fine with the suspension right now. Got some classic Harley Davidson styling points. You gotta have your skulls, brother. Also, shout out to Indian Larry, gotta have that. And of course, this is an FXR, so something else you have to have is a leak. It is true, my people. These bikes do leak. Yes. So, yeah, man. We're in for a long, leaky adventure with this bike, and that's fine. I totally accept that. You know, the rumors are true. They do leak, and that's it. I knew what I was getting myself into, and I'm fine with it. You know, even my Sportster from the 80s that I learned on, that bike always leaked too. And honestly, that bike never broke down, never let me down, and I threw plenty of miles on that. Other things on this bike that I just really have no idea, like what's going on. Like, there's this like button over here. I have no idea what this does. I'm kind of afraid to push it because I don't want the bike to like self-destruct. Also, this like random hose over here. Don't know what this is, or is it I don't know what this is. I have no idea. So I'm still learning about this bike. There's plenty I still don't know. But what I do know is I'm really happy with it right now. I'm really happy with it aesthetically. And for the little amount of riding I've done on it, I'm pretty much blown away. And if you want to see my first impressions of the ride on this bike, definitely check out my next video, because, you know, there's definitely some things you need to know if you've been intrigued by this, or you're in the market for an FXR, or you're just curious. So come along for the first ride with me. And also, probably something else to mention is, in terms of a carburetor, this bike does have the McCuney carb. Which number that is, I don't know. I'll have to look it up if you really need that information. And yeah, man, running Shinko tires, got the magged out wheels. Maybe something else that should be mentioned is it did come with an LED headlight. Not sure which one that is, but that's cool. Always like LED lighting. Probably will throw a Moon's MC Fly Eye on there, assuming it is compatible with these older bikes. Why don't we go ahead and do a startup, and then we'll kind of close it out shortly from there. So let's see what this thing sounds like. There you go. If you wanted to know what the 80s sounded like, that's it. Yeah, so sound-wise, is it comparable to a 110 with a Fab 28 2-into-1? Probably not. But does it have character? Yes, it does. Alright, y'all, so that's pretty much all I could think of in terms of what you might want to know about this bike off the bat. If there's anything that I left out or anything you guys want to know, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'll do my best. Like I said, I'm still learning about this bike. There's a lot I don't know. I'm a lot better at riding motorcycles than I am at knowing all the little details and tech specs that you might want to know. But yeah, I'm going to take this thing for a nice little Sunday ride. So I hope you guys will join me in my next video where we do the first impressions of the 1988 FXR. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there and stay low. And on that, BK Low is out.